Alright, so this is the Mighty Gunner build. It is a burst damage and consistent DPS build. The beauty of this build is it is your standard Zinogre shotgun meta, but it takes it a step further by basically adding a shit ton of burst damage that equals to about anywhere from 8,000 upwards to pushing 11,000 damage depending on how you do this build. The one I'm using now is good for about 8,500 damage in 10 seconds with a single magazine of Wyvern Heart. So yeah, here it is. Here's the decorations. Armor sets on the left, skills on the right. Max might is kind of the key to this build as far as maintaining a really high consistent critical chance. The scope attachment is actually where a lot of the damage is coming from in the Wyvern Heart. So without wasting any more time, let's just show you what this thing can do. Okay, so here we are in the training arena. Same build. I ate for attack up large, and of course I'm going to buff myself for a little more damage. Just to prove that I'm using the same build, here's the shots. Alright. And let's buff up and do this. Should be about 8,416 damage on this particular build. You can get more, and I will show that right after this. So you'll see me using the scope. You get a lot of extra damage on top of your Wyvern Heart mod when you do this properly, which I'm about to show you. Okay, what did I forget? Anything? That's probably good. I have roughly 2. Okay, oops, fail. Alright, and let's just redo that might pill because I'm an idiot. Okay. Alright, let's go. Now the ideal way to do this move is to throw down a shock trap right before you do it so the monster's head is nice and steady, and you can just go ahead and do what I just did right there for 8,600. It'll be that every time if you do it properly, because your affinities should be at 100% on the weak spots with this build, so it won't really fluctuate. So just to show the shotgun's effectiveness, let's just rebuff for fun. When you use the scope, you get a really good amount of damage per shot. As you can see, 427, that's nothing to spit at. The trick is using the scope, which I'm going to show you how I apply that to the actual fights in the next clip, because most people are probably thinking, well, that's probably a really impractical way to play. In some cases, that would be true, but if you understand the build and how to basically play it well and achieve your burst damage when you want to, and play with this scope enough, you get pretty good at getting those really good powerful shots. So yeah, next up I'm going to show you what this build can do for guiding lands people that like to run fortify. You can actually get up to around 10,726 damage running fortify on the same setup. So here's that next clip now. Okay, so now that you've seen the damage that this build can do, the next clips are going to show you basically how I apply that when I'm fighting. One of the first steps I do, if it's not an Elder Dragon, is I start every fight, obviously by attaching my scope, loading my Wyvern Heart, buffing myself up, and then the first thing I do when I see the monster is I throw down generally a shock trap. It's more stable. While they're trapped, they don't squirm as much. So right then, I'm usually popping a might pill and then unloading Wyvern Heart into its face, all 50 rounds at max crit. So it's a great way to start a fight with a huge chunk of burst damage, you know, depending how you make this build, 8 to 10, 11,000 even, however you want to run that. It's a great way to start a fight. Your shotgun benefits from this as well if you play with the scope. So here's a couple videos that kind of show it being used. Some of the speedrun videos are also on this channel of like other random monsters we've done this method to, or I have done this method to. Either way, here they are.
Iberian Impact. That broke the game. That still breaks the game because they gave it a fucking upgrade. Like, it's just stupid shit like that.
Yeah, that's party. That's why I just don't fuck with like mainstream bullshit. If I want to play with, you can suck it if you don't like it. That's it. I wanted to try out the sword and shield. Of course, no one in the party is gonna dog me for trying to the fucking sword and shield because they know I want that. Doesn't matter.
Got him.
God.
Record.
Jesus Christ. 3 minutes 52. Fuck me.
Alright, so that's pretty much the gist of the Mighty Gunner build. Those short clips kind of show it being used. I left a few details out about the mantles that I'm using. Rocksteady is great so you're not interrupted while you're dealing your burst damage. And after you deal your burst damage, it's usually good when you switch to your spread 3s to also throw on the impact mantle to create some good knockdown and stun potential while you're waiting for Wyvern Heart to recharge. Generally, if you're playing solo with this build, by the time you've already used your first Wyvern Heart and ran out of your first rack of spread 3, the monster is usually on its last legs, at which point you have a choice to either finish the fight most of the time with either a Wyvern Shot or another Wyvern Heart. If you wanted, you could craft more spread 3, but at that point it's really unnecessary. The monster is so close to being dead if you played well, you shouldn't need to do that if most of your shots were connecting. Beyond that, you know, you could mod this build up, you can mod it down. You've kind of seen how I'm generating the damage I am. This doesn't break the Zinogre shotgun meta build that everyone's using, it simply adds to it. So if you wanted to change this or tweak this, be my guest. This was the most stable damage I could get out of all the builds that I made for it. So I prefer to use this one, and I refer to it as the Mighty Gunner 9K because it averages about 9,000 on its burst damage, and the shotguns on the good hits are connecting for anywhere from, you know, 400 and upwards to 450s or even more on some monsters, even or less, depends, but not by much. So that's Mighty Gunner. Enjoy.